Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first panel discussion of 2024. It is both exciting and kind of scary that we're already into a brand new year. I'm Stephanie Lemick. I'm the founder and CEO of the Wounded Workforce, an organization dedicated to building trauma-informed workplaces. I am so excited today to have an amazing group joining us to talk about something that's really important and something we don't talk about enough, especially in the workplace: self-acceptance. So before we dive in, I would love to give our panelists a chance to introduce themselves, and I will go ahead and kick it over to Alestin first. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, my name is Alestin. I've been a mental health therapist since 2012. I focus on trauma, so I do EMDR, which is a really effective trauma modality. I've been doing that for a while, and I'm currently the clinic director at LA Mental Health in Omaha.
Amazing. It's great to have you. All right, Geraldine.
Hi, everyone. My name is Geraldine Roberts. I'm a leadership development practitioner as well as a self discovery coach. I'm really focusing on using the practice of self discovery as a path to growth, development, and healing. And so that can encompass a lot of different practices within that. And so I just walk alongside particular leaders and how what they're learning about themselves shows up in their work. And so I'm so happy and honored to be here.
Amazing. So great to have you here with us again. Rebecca.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Baumgartner. I'm a human resources and DEI executive here in Kansas City, Missouri. Go Chiefs. No, I don't know Taylor Swift, but I was in an elevator with Travis Kelce once. So it's like that close. Like we're almost besties. So
yeah, 1 degree. That's pretty impressive.
That's pretty good.
Amazing. Kim.
Hello, I am Kim Rower. I'm the Chief Creative Officer of Peak HR, which is a training and learning program for HR professionals. I've spent the last 15 plus years leading people and culture and workplace teams at tech startups, most recently at Oyster, which is a fully distributed global company across 70 countries. I also, in addition to the Peak HR work, I'm also a coach and consultant and advisor, doing all sorts of. I'm about to. It's a sneak peek for everyone watching this. I'm about to relaunch my new patchwork portfolio brand because I was like, I'm doing too many things. They all have to go together somehow. But if it's related to this space, I'm probably finding a way to do it these days.
Absolutely. Amazing. And amazing Substack too. So if you are a Substacker, you make sure and subscribe to Kim. You can get like she works in tarot and all sorts of fun stuff. So always amazing for those fellow readers out there. And last but certainly not least, my birthday buddy, Kate. We found out recently we have the same birthday. It's actually the 23rd of this month. So, hey, Aquariuses unite.
1, 2, 3. If you know how to count, you know our birthday.
Exactly.
Which may help you understand the name of the company that I founded mid last year. I'm the owner of 123 Limited, and I am a consultant in the organizational learning and development space. Very passionate about helping people be empathetic to their own and others' humanity.
Amazing. So excited. I'm so thrilled for this conversation and so grateful to each of you for joining us. So I will dive in so we can get the good stuff started, get the conversation going. And like always, I love to start from a place of shared understanding. So I want to share a little bit about self-acceptance and what we'll be focused on today. Self-acceptance is exactly what the name suggests, the state of complete acceptance of oneself. True self-acceptance is about more than just our qualifications, concessions, acceptance, exceptions. It's really about embracing who you are without any of that in consideration. This doesn't mean we don't change. We all change, of course, and our self acceptance is going to flex with us throughout those changes. It may be helpful to think of self acceptance as acceptance of yourself now and as you are, um, accepting of who you can become. Like many, I have struggled with self acceptance and am definitely still navigating the often challenging journey of self acceptance. So today, I'm super excited to talk more about the importance of self acceptance, especially as it relates to our growth as team members and leaders in the workplace. So, thrilled to have this group here to chat more about self acceptance. And I would love to start the conversation by asking each of you to share a story from your own journey of self acceptance. And anyone who would like to start can feel free to jump in.
I always take one for the team and go first because no one ever wants to go first. Um, I I was very excited when you asked me about this specific topic and joining this panel because this is pretty much I spent the entirety of 2023 going on a journey of self-discovery, and I went deep into my mental health and to discovering my neurodiversity and learning about the ways that I show up at work and how to apply my strengths to my work. And it was I had avoided doing that for a long time because it can feel very navel gazy to just like I'm just going to think about me and what I want and what I'm good at and who I am. And it feels very like indulgent. I have two young children. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about myself in that way. Um, but I spent a lot of time doing that in this last year. And really by the midpoint of 2023, I was starting to feel this acceptance that you described, this feeling of like, I get it. I know who I am now and like I'm cool with it. Um, and it wasn't really until I would say like Q3, Q4, towards the end of the year that I started moving even from acceptance into like self-love and self-appreciation and really like not just like embracing and being okay with it and being like, you know what? I have ADHD. I'm not lazy. I have a different brain. Here's how my brain works and what I need to be successful. But then like flipping that and realizing, and here are all the things that I can do that other people can't do. And here's what's so great about that. And here's what's so amazing about what I bring to the table. And it was so transformative for me as a human, as a mom, as an HR person, as a person existing in the working world to start feeling super confident in how I show up for what I do. And now I'm on this like journey of like everyone should do this. Why isn't everyone doing this all the time? Like finding ways to love themselves for who they are. Like I live in Berkeley, so I can get a little Berkeley about it, but I really think it's so vital, especially as women, especially if you belong to any marginalized group of any type that's been, discounted in the workforce, finding not just ways to accept how you show up, but to see those as strengths.
I can go. Yeah, I really resonate with what you said, Kim. And for me, like as I was thinking about this, I'm like, oh, there's so many examples. But I think for me, the most transformative one is a very simple one where it came to when I realized and I accepted that I am human. And what I mean by that is, as a Black woman, there is a lot of expectations, there's a lot of pressure and stereotypes around being strong, being exteriorly hard, being able to be everything to everyone, and expectations around how I show up, particularly in spaces where I'm the only or one of few. And so trying to live up to all of those expectations and shoulder what sometimes felt like, I'm the only one here, so I'm a representative of how people see all Black women, right? Like feeling that pressure sometimes, I felt like a failure, right? I felt like I'm this person's not happy, this person's finding something wrong, and over again. And so it came to a point of like when I accepted that I am human, right? I have feelings, I am emotional, and I am not going to be able to meet everybody's expectations. And I do not represent all Black women. We are not a monolith. We are very different. And accepting that really was liberating for me because it really allowed me to live into my authentic self and to be my vulnerable self and to lead from a place of authenticity that allowed and gave permission to other people to do the same. And so I think if it might sound really simple that like you're human, right? But it also gave me permission to take off the cape and put it down and to not be strong sometimes, right? And it actually, just like you alluded to, can let that these things became strengths of mine. And so I think that's something that we all can commonly accept is that we're human and that is and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to be able to accept and to be liberated by.
Stephanie, can we do like a pull quote, like put down the cape? I just like that. That hit me so hard. It's such a good visual, Geraldine, of like,
Yeah.
it's okay. Like, put the cape away. You do not need it. It is not yours to bear.
I
I
love
love
that.
that.
Thank you. Yeah.
That I'll jump in. That also resonated with me. I am a fanatic of Wonder Woman. I'm very rarely more than just let's see if I can do it this way, a few feet away from something with Wonder Woman on it. And that's been a real journey, recognizing that I can have an aspirational version of myself, but then there's the reality of it. I am not Wonder Woman. There is no cape, right? There's no invisible plane. And what I like to say is that I'm a student of things like self acceptance, because I'm really bad at it, actually. And some of that is the Wonder Woman mentality. Some of that's perfectionism. But the story I'll tell on myself that was one of those light bulb moments was on my wedding day. My husband and I got married at America's Packard Museum, and I made my bridal entrance from the library. And coming through the doorway, my father accidentally rammed me into the threshold, the door jamb, and it jammed my corsage because I didn't have a bouquet, like up into my arm. I ended up bleeding. It was just this moment of what should have been, the picture perfect. I'm the bride. I get to have my special day. And the first time I saw the groom, all of the friends and family, just this remarkably clumsy, almost falling on my butt moment. And I remember that instant after getting my footing again and my dad breathing, of thinking, not even on your wedding day, Kate, you get to be human. And it's just this up and down in our lives that we do have moments that are transcendent and we do really well. But because we're human, Geraldine, it sounds like you and I read from the same sheet of music there. We also have these moments where even on the best days, we stumble, we fall down, we end up with scars. So yeah.
I'll go next. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. It was really interesting when Stephanie brought this up. I was like, I think she's reading my mind. Like most people, I kind of pick an intention for the year, right? Mine actually this year is acceptance. Really with that intentional focus on myself and expectations that I put on myself. I had a very, very dark past 6 months, like the last half of 2023, because I kind of fell victim to this lack of acceptance and this toxic comparison to other people, right? Like, in addition to like my day job, I work at a very large regional chamber of commerce over people and operations. But I also am an executive coach. I also do consulting. I do public speaking. So, when I see like other peers and colleagues, they're like, oh, I'm speaking at this event and this event on this topic. I'm like, why are they doing like, I'm really great. Why doesn't anybody how do I not get these same opportunities? Like I have really great content on this. Like I'm really like intelligent in this area. Why am I not getting that? And I was being very, very hard on myself because I had these unrealistic expectations. And I kept trying to tell myself, I just need to put myself out there more. But as I started to kind of come around and figure out, okay, I've got to get a handle on this because I am wallowing really, really deep. And it was affecting my family life. It was affecting my professional life. And the more I dug in, I'm like, well, these speakers, I know them. They're great. They don't have a day job. Like this is their job, is to go out and get this. So of course they have more opportunities because this is how they get paid. And I don't have that, for good or bad, right? And just trying to be very acceptant of myself, my circumstances. If I wanted to quit my job and go do that full time, absolutely, I could do that. But that's not where I'm at in my life right now. And accepting that and realizing that I can't be everything to everybody. I can't do all things. And really being realistic about what my limitations are, what my strengths are, and where I'm at in my life, instead of comparing myself to others, is big. And so that's definitely a process that, kind of like how Kim said, 2023 was a journey for her. I think 2024 is going to be the journey for me, and trying to get away from that and being comfortable and accepting what I am and what I do right now.
Okay. So, I can relate to what a lot of you have said. I think I maybe don't anymore compare myself to other people. I just compare myself to, well, I don't know, this perfect idea of what somebody should be. I have no idea. Working with my own therapist, I have discovered that directing a new business, it was a lot more than what I was used to working on my own, because it became very easy to work on my own because I ran into a routine and I was really only responsible for myself. When you are responsible for a lot of other things and there are a lot of people needing things from you, and I just didn't have boundaries of when and where I would do those things, and realized that probably through my perfectionism or my performance, I was hiding other aspects of myself, or thought I was masking other aspects of myself that I was afraid of that might not even be true. I don't know. So what I learned was, just because I can do something doesn't mean I need to do something, or should do something, or want to do something. And that because I've worked really hard for over a decade, like whatever happens, I'm going to be okay. Like I've proven myself in my community, in my profession, and that like I'm good. I'm good either way. And it's been a lot calmer since I've discovered that.
That idea of just because I can doesn't mean I should. I literally wrote that on my like vision board for 2024. I was like, this is the mantra. This is the thing. Like it's such a good reminder. And I think it's stereotypical, but I think especially as women, we are raised in this culture to believe that if you can do something, you should do it. You should do everything that you're good at, because that's how you prove your worth.
You can do anything you put your mind to, right?
Right.
And so then we have like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, and it's just such bullshit, because like that's how we end up overextended and burnt out, and like you can't accept yourself if you are doing everything that is possible for you to do, whether or not it's where you're your best self, whether or not it brings you joy, whether or not it's your zone of genius. Like just because you can technically do it doesn't mean it's the right thing for you individually to do. I feel like if I have one, I'm making this up now, if I have like one soapbox for the year of like my coaching work or my like yelling on the internet, it's like I want to get more people to believe this and to be it. And Rebecca, I'm sure you feel this, like coming from the HR world, like if you are the head of people at a company, like you probably are nodding your head right now, because about what it's like to say yes to everything, and you know what it's like to be expected to say yes to everything, and yeah, that's possible for you to do, so you're going to do it. And it's like let this be the year that we say no.
Yeah. I love this so much because I think it gets to two things about self-acceptance that get in a lot of our ways. They get in my way for sure. And I think, one thing is that, perfection or, having to meet the highest tier or learning love and acceptance and feeling valued by others. For a lot of people, that's a trauma response. And I think for me specifically, it is a trauma response, that behavior, that inability to kind of stop striving, stop doing. And even if it isn't a trauma response for you, it's really culturally ingrained by we add value by what we do. It's basically like that's hustle culture like broken apart. And I think rejecting that is so incredibly powerful. It's also really hard to do that because so often what's reinforced is do more things and like get more like gold stars from the world. And it's how do you move from that external validation to internal validation? And I'm going to be a bad moderator and like share my own story just because you all have been so vulnerable, but I'm going to break the moderator rules. For me, I had this really profound kind of moment of realizing the importance of self acceptance last year and in a very unexpected way. And that I don't know if this is just a weird Stephanie thing or if there are other people who can relate. I feel like it is something like other women do. But there was some point in my life, like I stopped looking at mirrors unless I had to, like, you know what I mean? Like I stopped like gazing at my reflection unless it was absolutely necessary. I'm not sure when that happened, but it happened. And in my yoga practice, like there are mirrors everywhere. And I had been avoiding the mirror. I had been of like being far enough away that I didn't have to look at myself in the mirror. And I got it's a little late to class one day, and I ended up having to be up in the front row right in front of the mirror. And a woman I practice with, she practices, quite a bit at the same time I do. She came up to me and she said, "It was so lovely to have you practice up in the front row this time. Like, I really enjoyed it." And I like very awkwardly was like, "Yeah, it's so hard to look in the mirror sometimes. Like it's so hard to watch myself." And she's like, "I can understand that, but like, you should come. Like, I want to invite you to the front row and I want you to know that you're safe on your mat and in the space to see yourself." And like, holy crap. And now I practice in front of the mirror all the time. Some days it's harder than others. But I think there's a real power in inviting people to see themselves in a safe way. And so, if nothing else you take from this conversation, I hope you take an invitation to find that self acceptance. Kim's journey she had this last year, the journey Rebecca's on, the one I'm planning to be on for as long as I need to be, probably the rest of my life. I think that journey is so powerful. So accept the invitation and see how it can impact you. All right, I'll go back to my moderator role now. I promise I won't take the moderator hat off again. But one thing that we talk about a lot at work is self-awareness. So I think we talk about self-awareness all the time in the workplace. But I'd love to hear from each of you, how does self-acceptance support self-awareness and our ability to really receive and react to feedback in the right way?
I would like to start on this one because I have a strong opinion. I always have ready opinions, but I want to submit that I think self-acceptance is actually like the desired end product of self-awareness, and that feedback is one of the instruments of getting from A to B. In my practice, I see that there are three types of skills associated with feedback. There's obviously the the skill of giving feedback, but then you have the skill of receiving it in a way that's gracious and humble, brave. But then there's applying or responding to the feedback that you receive. And I think that's the place where I'm not just, polite when somebody tells me I've done something that they think is wrong, which is, by the way, not receiving feedback. That's being beaten up. But when I receive feedback and I've evaluated it as having application for me, what I do with it and that learning process, that's what seeds the ground for us to move from awareness to acceptance. So just turning that question a little bit on its head or reordering it, because I think they're closely related, but I do believe awareness comes before acceptance.
No, I agree, because I think if you don't know who you are, if you don't understand what your imperfections are or what your strengths are, how can you accept yourself? You're not going to be accepting yourself. Things that I've struggled with in the past through, code switching and covering and imposter syndrome is, I am not going to show up as who I am. I'm going to show up as who I think I need to be. And I'm never going to be as impactful or effective or productive, because if I can't even accept myself and be who I am, how can I expect others? Right. So really being aware of who you are and how you show up is always, it's really important. It's definitely the first step. And I think also from, because I do a lot of work in DEI, I think it's also extremely important as a piece of DEI work, right? Like being self-aware and self-accepting, you are being very intentional. You are working to eliminate any kind of bias in your interactions, in your conversations with people, because you are aware of what those biases are in yourself. And I think that also helps set the stage and example for others to be accepting of those things and being aware of their own biases in other people as well.
I would also offer, I think it may shift depending on where in your life you're working toward this self-acceptance, right? So for instance, in my example that I shared about just accepting that I'm human, being able to use that as my starting point allows me to really lean into and acknowledge all of my humanity, because I've accepted that, right? And that allows for me to lean into the both and not feel like it's an either or, right? Self-acceptance is about really just like accepting all of who we are, both the good and what we perceive to be the not so good, without the judgment. And so if I can start there, then that allows me to explore my emotions that might come up, right? To sit with those emotions in a more objective way, because I've started at this place of acceptance. And so I'm entering in to the awareness with the foundation of acceptance. And that allows me to have a resilience to the feedback that I receive, right? Because I'm able to hear clearer, right? I'm able to hear your feedback, knowing that that is from a place of helping me to grow and develop, and I can be less defensive because I've accepted the humanity of who I really am. And so I think I don't think there's a right or wrong approach to it, but I do think it's a more intermingling between the two, and what that looks like for each person may be different. But it allows us to explore and accept those emotions, and go deeper, right? And discover the root of some of those emotions that may come up as we're receiving that feedback. But I do think acceptance does provide us with a mindset that views feedback as opportunity for growth, right? Rather than a personal attack. And a perspective that really enhances our ability to learn from the constructive criticism, or to decide that I hear you and I actually don't think that's something that I'm going to apply, because at the end of the day, we're at choice about how we move through and with the feedback we receive. But I think that's because we've come to a place of acceptance of who we are as a person in our full humanity.
Mm-hmm. I love how you said you kind of brought in like judgment, like you're, not judging yourself. And I think that that's important, both from like an internal and an external perspective. Like if I can stay out of judgment for myself and I can accept the humanity in myself, I can accept the humanity in others. And I can stay out of judgment for maybe what they're coming to the table with, and I can accept their faults and I can provide good and constructive feedback. So I think that is so important, Geraldine, is that staying out of that judgment and accepting is huge and a great way to build stronger relationships.
I think there's also the idea that we are not our weaknesses, just as we are not our strengths. Our strengths and weaknesses are temporary, where we, as people, are a little less temporary, I guess. But if we identify with our weaknesses, that can bring on a lot of shame. And shame is going to trigger those less desirable responses to feedback. So if we can look at us over here and like, here are our strengths, here are our weaknesses, and view them outside of ourselves, so then that does foster the opportunity for learning and growing that you guys were talking about.
I think a lot of what we're talking about too is identity and how you view yourself. And the more confident you can be in who you are, even if you don't love all of those pieces, like even if you're accepting them and they're things you're trying to change about yourself or whatever, the less you are going to be inclined to like chameleon yourself through the workforce, taking everybody's feedback and trying to adapt to it to be better, to be more like what someone is asking you to be. Like, I love this idea of someone gives you feedback, and like Geraldine said, you can say like, you know what, like I hear you, but that's not me. That's not who I am. And there's a certain amount of positional privilege that you have to be able to outwardly reject someone's feedback. But like, I think all of us deserve to have that experience. All of us deserve to be in a situation where we can take feedback and say, I hear what you're saying, and I want to try to find a way to meet you where you are that's authentic to who I am. That doesn't require me to twist myself in knots and become someone I'm not. Because that's how we can actually be our strongest selves in community, in our work communities, or in general in life.
Kim, I like that you called out. Oh, please
Go ahead.
No, Kim, I love that you called out identity, because I think, what Alliston was talking about and that you were able to amplify is that we have intrinsic worth. So our strengths, our weaknesses, although Alliston, when you said I'm not my strengths, it chilled me to the bone for a moment. But you're exactly right, that regardless of where I live, what I do, what I'm good at, what I suck at, I have value because I'm a person here on the world. And that's what we should be deriving our sense of worth, our identity, our acceptance of ourselves. That's our foundation. Just thank you very much for those two pieces. It was a great light bulb for me.
I love too the conversation we're having around feedback and being able to filter through the feedback that doesn't apply to us, or I think sometimes is more about the person giving feedback than it is about us. Feedback is one of those things that's been really sexy, in recent years. People want you to receive feedback. People want to give feedback. And I think we've got a little bit of a messy feedback culture happening in the workplace where people don't know how to actually give good constructive feedback. They don't know how to ask if it's okay to offer feedback. They don't know, how they don't have the right tools and understanding around it. They just know this is something I should be engaging in. And that point, like, you're getting all this feedback thrown at you, and like, do you adjust to everything everyone says? I think being able to discern that's really important, especially at this point we're at. I'm going to say something a little off color that I say sometimes about feedback, but I think it's really important for each of us to be able to discern what is real, meaningful feedback that is helpful to us, and when is someone just kind of smearing their poop on the wall? Like, when does someone just need to like have a moment? Like I told you, it was going to be off color, you guys, but I think it's important because if we try and take in everything everyone has to say about us, and we really internalize that, we get back to that like perfection. You can't be everything to everyone all the time. It just doesn't work. It's not possible as humans. Um, our next question: what are some common misperceptions that we should work to dispel when it comes to self acceptance?
Oh, that it's like a one and done thing. That it's like, I have reached the plane of self-acceptance and now I am beautifully zen and centered in my life at all times. Like, it just doesn't fucking work that way. Like, you can be on a lifelong journey of self-acceptance. You can accept 99% of yourself and still have one part of yourself that you are desperately trying to get rid of. Like, it's a spectrum and it's a journey and like it's okay. Like this is very like meta. Like you have to accept that your self-acceptance is not final and is not perfect.
I would also say self-acceptance does not mean complacency, right? So, we've accepted, we accept who we are. That doesn't mean we're just floating around and being like, well, this is just who I am, and I don't want to grow and I don't want to develop. It is again kind of that what is meaningful to me and knowing what my strengths are and developing in that. So just because we accept us for who we are doesn't mean we're lazy. It doesn't mean that we're not growing and developing, right? That's definitely a big misconception. And I will also add, kind of on the opposite side, if anybody's ever read the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There by Marshall Goldsmith, I'm a huge Goldsmith fan. One of those things that he says, this is what will cause you to fall off the ladder. This is something that, is a detriment to you. And it's the overwhelming need to be me. And so just because we have accepted ourselves doesn't mean, kind of like I said, this is who I am. This is how I show up. And you know what, you guys can just suck it. You just got to deal with it. That's not how the world works. So again, showing up in a way that's authentic to ourselves, that accepts ourselves, and still kind of being able to meet other people where they are without being toxic about it, it's possible. And again, it's not something that comes immediately from self-acceptance. It's just when people kind of overuse that self-acceptance strength, right?
As I pointed out, Rebecca, that's exactly what I had written down. It does not equal complacency. And I think what you and Kim have done is to demonstrate that reaching self-acceptance is actually just the starting point. It's almost like the hard work begins after that of the, okay, I recognize that this is who and how I am. I'm going to embrace it. And what maybe do I need to change? And that's ironically even harder than the first embrace of, warts and all.
Yeah, I like that. And what do I need to change? I think that when we talk about acceptance and authenticity, especially, it's a spectrum, right? So like what do we need to embrace? But then also, what are we comfortable kind of flexing on, right? Like I can accept myself for who I am and I can be comfortable and authentic, but this might not work for everybody in this certain situation. So what part of me do I need to flex? Am I comfortable with flexing in order to be effective and productive in this situation?
Yeah. And I want to qualify. I said need to change. And yes, there will be times where there's almost like a mandate. Like if I want a promotion, but I don't have a skill set and I need to be able to do public speaking, well, then I need, if this is the thing I'm going after, to develop that skill. I accept that I don't have it now and that there's a need, but we don't need to, wail on ourselves, to beat ourselves up in that space. So I think what you've talked about, that flexing, being comfortable to stretch and gain new skills, is really important to that. So there's sometimes a need, but also sometimes a desire to have growth and be different. And does it come from a place of love for yourself and how you are?
I love what you said, Rebecca, too, about that awareness connection to others and how you're connecting with others, because I think it gets to, you kind of dismantle a lot of the bias some folks may have around self-acceptance or talking about it at work. Because, say, for example, I'm a big picture gal. I like to get things started. I like to have big ideas. I kind of suck at like finishing them. Like, guess what? I still have to finish stuff. And it is how I it's acknowledging that's not necessarily like one of the things I'm the best at. So it helps me have that acceptance and awareness so I can, set myself up for success, find powerful partnerships to help me get through, like use other tools, knowing, yeah, I'm a big picture gal. That doesn't mean I just get to be a big picture gal. Like in all aspects of the world, it's really how can I adjust and flex and really do more meaningful things with that feedback, with that, those cues you're getting from life, from work, from your family, all those different places you exist.
One of the things that keeps coming up is this flexing, but I love the way you talked about it, Stephanie, with finding the powerful partnerships, because I'll just give a free shout out to the Adobe Creative Type online quiz. It is my favorite one because it's super fun and it's like got cute little animations. But when they give you your results, they tell you what your creative type is and who you should partner with. So when I did the thing, the first time I did it, I was like, I'm a visionary. Like, no, I'm like an executor. Like, I get shit done. Like, that's my whole MO. But then as I was reading it, I was like, well, but these are the things that make me really happy, actually. And it's like, you need to find yourself a maker to partner with. And I went and read the description of maker, and I was like, oh shit, I've been trying to do all of these things all this time, but like, I don't love doing them. They're not what I'm great at. And like, what do you mean I can just not do those things or not do those things primarily or partner with someone who has those strengths and skills and who is enthusiastic to partner with me because they don't have the visionary skills, right? Like there's these balances. And I had a coworker at my last company who was just so fucking good holding me accountable to myself. And we would be assigning work to a project and I would raise my hand to do something because like, yeah, I can build that thing in Asana. And she would call me out and she's like, why? Why are you raising your hand for this? This is too operational for you. Why are you trying to volunteer for this work? And I was like, I don't know, because like I could and somebody's got to do it. But again, it's like it allows you to set these boundaries with yourself and say, you know what? Like just because I could doesn't mean I should. And like you're right. There's this person sitting next to me who's maybe a little bit quieter about raising her hand, but she loves building projects in Asana and keeping track of tasks. And like, why am I trying to take that joy from her just so that I can like get the gold stars and doing stuff? And it takes that minute of accepting, like, it's okay that I'm not good at those things. And it's okay that I don't want to be good at those things. As long as I can find the people to partner with who balance me out. Um, and I had seen it for so long as a personal failure until this coworker was like, yeah, the big picture stuff, like that is not my jam. Like, don't give me a blank piece of paper and tell me to come up with ideas. Like, what do you mean that's the fun part? She's like, well, for you, it's the fun part. And it's like, it just really, and like I tell you, like 2023 was this like light bulbs everywhere. I was like, oh shit, like, okay, I get it now. And so that's accepting these things not as failures, but as opportunities for partnership, opportunities to build your community and fill your circle with people who have a variety of talents and strengths is like, it's way more fun than trying to do it all yourself and trying to believe that you can just like bootstrap your way into perfectionism.
Love it. So we all make mistakes, that human thing, showing up again. But sometimes those mistakes and missteps can really get in the way when it comes to that journey to self-acceptance. So what advice do you have for helping move past our mistakes and missteps?
I could share on this one. I feel like we've all named the human aspect. I would also say accountability, right? And being accountable to the mistakes that you made, and accept that you made a mistake. Like it's okay, you made a mistake, but being accountable really allows you to learn from the mistake instead of sitting in the shame and the guilt because you made the mistake, right? It's more so learning and developing from the mistake and saying, hey, I made a mistake. Here are the things that I would do better next time. Here is the impact of the mistake. What can I learn to avoid making the same mistake? But when we sit in that guilt and that shame, because we made a mistake, when we all know we're gonna make mistakes, it's gonna happen. And so it's almost unfair to yourself to sit in that for too long, because at the end of the day, it's gonna happen. And so being accountable, I think is one way to move past it. And it also helps build trust with your team, with your peers, with friends or whoever this mistake happened with, right? Because it's not just in work. We make mistakes with our family and our friend relationships. But I think it's just as important to be accountable and with those mistakes as it is in a workplace. And so that's how you build trust and community, and relationships, because then that also lends permission to other people to say, I made a mistake and this is what happened. And how could you help me? We're just talking about partnerships, right? Like, how can we help one another as we're learning and growing through the mistakes that we're making? So I think accountability is a big part of that, moving forward and moving through.
I totally agree with that. There is a natural instinct to pull away from things that make us really uncomfortable. And when we make a mistake, that makes us really uncomfortable. But then there's the idea that of self-compassion, where if you lean into that mistake more and really dig into what was going on that led me to do that, what was I thinking, what was my previous experience that made me think that was the right move to make, and figuring that out, that is a way to take accountability, but it's also a way to prevent it from happening in the future. So yeah, there's instead of self-esteem that people have talked about for so long, there is a movement called self-compassion that is kind of, I don't know if it's taking over, but I really enjoy it.
It should take over. I know, I love it. I love the concept of self-compassion. That's super helpful. We're talking a lot about, how to build self-acceptance. I'd love to hear if any of you have some good practices that we can use to help build self-acceptance. It can be something big, small, just anything that, you've used in the past or recommendations you have.
For me, and this is going to be kind of silly, but it's just really small, right? And it's like all about your personal life. So, like, has anybody ever used guilty pleasures, right? Like, this show is my guilty pleasure. So get that out of your vocabulary. It's you enjoy it. It's a pleasure. Who cares what anybody else thinks? I will tell you, I've stopped using that, and it's been really great. And also, when you kind of start to share that with people without worrying about what they think, it starts a really good conversation, and it really makes you vulnerable, and it feels better to make that connection. So I am on Goodreads, and so for the longest time, I would not put books on there because I've been kind of getting into some of these spicy romance books, but I don't put it on, right. But I didn't put it on Goodreads because I'm like, oh my God, what are these people going to think of? I like to read these spicy romances every now and then. But by kind of putting that away and stop trying to get validation from other people, I've just accepted it and said, you know what? I don't care. I enjoy this. There's probably other people out there who enjoy this too. And I'm just going to do it. So just kind of starting small with some of those things, whether those are cheesy Hallmark holiday movies. Don't hide that. Just
how are we not best friends, Rebecca? You are naming all of my favorite things.
We need to probably connect offline, Kim.
I think so.
But yeah, just embrace that, and just kind of starting small, maybe in some where you feel a little bit safe, can really kind of build that compassion, that confidence to do that in bigger ways in the workplace or in larger high risk situations.
I love that, taking that out of your vocabulary. I'm sorry, I just will offer one thing quickly is journaling. I'm a big journaler, and what I've learned is that sometimes the hardest person to be honest about the truth of who I am and all of my humanity is myself. And so I can't create those spaces for my teams, for my peers, if I'm not willing to create that space for myself. And so through that self-discovery work is where that self-acceptance blossomed from. And so doing some deep journaling work for me, and then also like Rebecca was just talking about, it's just self-talk is so important. How you talk to yourself, right? I love affirmations. I have to remind myself, just because I made a mistake, that doesn't make me a failure, right? Just because something didn't work out the way that I had planned, it doesn't make me a bad person. Or, all of these like affirming who I am, the both and of who I am, all of who I am is lovely. And so just reminding myself and talking to myself, and that is a struggle sometimes because we can be so hard on ourselves. There are things that I would say to myself that I would never say to anyone else, right? And so really keeping that top of mind. So journaling and positive self-talk are two practices I would totally recommend because I think it has to start with us before we can start trying to implement and create these amazing self-accepting spaces for others.
I'm just over here like taking notes on everything people are saying. Um, I this is maybe personal to me. I don't know, but I recommend taking every personality test that is available to you. If your work offers one, if you find them for free, I can share in the show notes like a link to some of my favorite free ones because generally what you'll find is that you get similar results from every test, whatever the vocabulary, whatever the context language is of the one that you're taking, you'll find patterns between the different results. And it's very validating and affirming, I find personally, um, to see just like it took me like 4 or 5 of these tests to really sink in. Like, you are not actually like a product manager, operator, executor person. Like, you might have done that for much of your career, but that is not like you in your heart and soul. And seeing that represented in a lot of different ways across multiple kind of personality, work style type quizzes. Like, it's some of these, it's like very silly, right? It's like a 5 question quiz. And I'm like, well, shit, that one thinks that I'm a vision person too. Well, shit, that one thinks I'm a big ideas person too. And oh my God, this one thinks that my best skill is like bringing people together around an idea. Like, it took a while to sink in, but like it's very validating to see those things across so many different mediums. And then it gives you, it gives you a language. It gives you a not like a medical diagnosis, but like, a feeling of diagnosis and words that you can use that other people might understand to describe how you work and how you show up. And if you're feeling stuck on like, well, how do I accept who I am if I don't even know who I am? Like, start with stupid personality tests and like see what you learn.
Yeah, to echo what people have said, it's really, I think, just about empathy. People talk about having empathy for others and they don't focus on having empathy for themselves. Like Geraldine was saying, like, you know, I did this. That doesn't mean I'm stupid. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person. What happened that led me to do that thing? Because we all just, I mean, we're animals at the end of the day and we react. We're hopefully a little smarter than most of them, so we can think more before we react, but we still have, there are parts of us that come out and react to things in a way that our most adult selves, our most logical selves would never, but we still did it. And it's important to know why. And that is the parts that you accept, because all of those little things that come out, like, there's a reason. And accepting them and having compassion for them is a much more effective way to then be able to fix it, if you want to say that, but like, I guess, make it work better in your life than if you just try to like push it down.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I can't believe it. We're almost out of time. This always happens. I'm always like, I wish we had a whole nother hour. Thank you all so much for all of your amazing insights. I always love to close with quick recommendations for the audience. If you have something, a book, an article, podcast, whatever, training, quizzes that you want to share with the audience as a recommendation for something they can take and learn more. I'd love to hear from each of you, and we'll start with Kate.
Sorry, I was looking at my book stack to see if there's anything new. But The Anxious Overachiever, I follow her on LinkedIn. She has a podcast. I think she may have a book out there too. I should have the title of it available, but just so relatable. And all the things we've been talking about, in terms of anxiety and recognizing what you do well and what your limits are and making peace with those things. I also have a book that I read recently called Soundtracks by John Acuff that is all about what we're talking about, is the how I talk to myself and learning to do it in a way that's not like an abuser, basically. So I would recommend that very highly. And then The Anxious Overachiever.
Amazing.
you.
Thank you. Kim.
Well, I have this book here, The Genius Zone, Gay Hendricks. The concept of the Genius Zone in combination with the Gallup Strengths Finder is like, that was like personality and inception zone for me. Really, really powerful stuff. And also, if you are a woman in your mid 30s to mid to late 40s, I highly recommend checking out Anne Helen Peterson's culture study Substack. She has a particular article called, I think it's "Are You in the Portal?" And it's about this very particular experience that women of a certain age go through. And it just it really touched me in a very specific way that I felt. I've been just sharing it with every human I know who is particularly applicable to, and also with my husband. I was like, you want to know what's happening right now with all of this? Read this article. I can provide a link afterwards, Stephanie, but it's this whole zone of self-discovery and self-acceptance. She just writes about it so beautifully.
Amazing. Rebecca. You're muted.
Sorry. Okay, so I have a few. One book that I would recommend is The Upside of Your Dark Side. And the tagline is why being your whole self, not just your good self, drives success and fulfillment. And it's all about kind of embracing everything that you are and accepting yourself kind of, as Geraldine was saying, as a human, and that you are in the human experience. Negative will happen, but how do you perceive that, and how do you go around that? I would also recommend any kind of positive psychology kind of work or anything in that topic. Specifically, Dr. Barbara Fredrickson has some good concepts of, there is positive, but it's not all positive. You have to have the negative, and they balance each other out, and you need to accept that for what it is. And that's how you can kind of move forward. And then, just because I have kind of a dark sense of humor, there is an Instagram profile that I follow called Disappointing Affirmations. It kind of flips positive affirmations on its head, but it makes me laugh, and it makes me go, yeah, you know what? Everything does kind of suck, but that's okay. So for example, the one I pulled it up so that I can share it is, you're doing the best you can with what you have. Unfortunately, what you have kind of sucks. So it's just a way to kind of get a laugh and to get kind of a reality check, but then, just kind of be like, yeah, it's going to be okay though. I am doing the best that I can with the hand that I've been dealt. So those would be my recommendations.
Amazing. Thank you. Geraldine.
Yeah, I have a couple. One to go along with the practice I suggested of journaling. Sometimes you need a place to start. And so even just Googling journal prompts on self-acceptance will bring up a lot of different resources, and for you, just a place to start. A couple of books that have been helpful along my journey. I'm currently reading The Mountain Is You by Brianna Weiss, I think is how you pronounce her last name, but it's about moving from self-sabotage to self-mastery, and it has been in my brain. You Are the Best Thing by Tarana Burke and Brene Brown has been really helpful. Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Glover Tawwab has been transformational for me too. The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown, if you haven't read that, so helpful. And then I would also suggest, if you're on that healing journey, I would say anything by Alex Elle has been really helpful in my journey, as well as Octavia Rahim. And so those are our two authors that I would highly suggest to look into.
Amazing. Thank you. And Alestin, last but certainly not least.
So Dr. Kristen Neff, Neff, has a website, self-compassion, so self-compassion.org, and it has quizzes if you have self-compassion, spoiler, you might not, and activities of how to increase self-compassion.
Amazing. So cool. And I'm going to do a shameless plug just because I can. And it sort of came up a little bit. But Kate and I are actually getting ready to have an amazing conversation about strengths, or Clifton strengths, Gallup strengths, and talk about self-acceptance, trauma-informed workplaces on Kate's podcast, the Comfy Chairs podcast. So keep an eye out for that as well. I think it's going to be a really awesome conversation and a bit of an extension of some of what we talked about here. I cannot thank of each of you enough. Such an amazing and insightful conversation. An amazing way to kick off our 2024 panel series. So thank you so much. For our viewers, thank you for making the time, and make sure to check out our February panel discussion, which is all about how trauma-informed workplaces support DE&I efforts. Until next time, have a wonderful rest of your January. And I'm just going to remind you again that this is your official invitation to practice self-acceptance. Thank you all so much.